Hey, Sam here from QPOD, and delighted to have along with us today Sharon Robinson from Smart Living Spaces, who joins us from up in Auckland, where they're really trailblazing and doing some very, very innovative things around sustainable building. Sharon, would you like to kick things off and maybe just sort of dive into a little bit about yourself and how you got started with Smart Living Spaces and what Smart Living Spaces is all about?
That's all about. Yes, thanks, Sam. So I started Smart Living Spaces 11 years ago. So I'm an architectural designer, certified passive house designer, and Homestar designer and assessor. And I became those things. I became the Homestar and passive house trained as a designer and director of Smart Living Spaces. But I've done architectural design for 24 years, and 11 years ago, I realized that the sustainability side of architecture wasn't happening for me in my career working for other people. And it's something I've been deeply passionate about ever since I was a teenager. And I've been drawing house plans since the age of 7. So it just made sense to couple those two together and to go out and make it happen. And so, launched into business. Sometimes it's better that you don't know how hard it's going to be and you just launch in and learn as you go. And so we're 11 years into that journey of learning. So that's what Smart Living Spaces is. Its focus is architectural design with people and planet in mind. Just creating healthy, comfortable, energy efficient homes for everyday people.
Wow, so good, so good. So what's sort of you've got a bit of a mission statement around sort of creating healthy, comfortable, low energy, low carbon homes. So what kind of inspired that focus specifically in you? What sort of led you there?
Broadly, it was that the sustainability. More detailed when I started doing my Homestar training, and when I was learning about passive house, I began to see the gap between design, which we're taught at architecture school, and then the actual building science, which makes it work. And I became aware then of the shortcomings with our building code here in New Zealand. And there is a common conception, even amongst the architectural community, that the building code gives you a quality building. But it's actually the bare minimums. And so I guess when I started to realize where we were going so wrong, I started to looking for ways to do it right. Because we all want comfortable homes. And when you start to learn how unhealthy status quo is, I felt a personal responsibility because those are families that are living in the spaces I create. So that was a big part of it, just that learning of just how badly we could be doing it and how do we do it better. So it's been my mission. Yeah.
Oh, so good. So good. And what are some of the biggest challenges, I suppose, with people sort of walking into your office or coming across your desk that homeowners are facing when they're sort of trying to either build or maybe renovate sustainably? What are the biggest challenges? Are they sort of cost driven, or is it just more around knowledge, or is it around actual sort of availability of supplies or materials, or what do you kind of see as the biggest challenge, just out of interest?
There's two big hurdles that I counter in conversations with them. One is this notion that sustainability or healthy homes is above minimum, so therefore it's going to cost more. There are things you can get right in the design that a good designer, a good architect will get right at the beginning. And people think they understand design because they've lived in a house, but that's just what they're familiar with. So part of it is shifting the mindset in people to say, this doesn't necessarily mean spending more in the big picture. Things like using a mechanical heat recovery ventilation system gives you fresh air, it gives you ability to recycle heat, it lowers your heating bills. But people think that that's an extra to the build when they go and buy appliances that do and retrofit systems to do that later on, which means the budget's a little bit skewed. So having that conversation around this is actually not necessarily more expensive, let's get the fundamentals right. And then this notion that the building code delivers a quality building. And a lot of builders think that too. So part of that conversation is also having a builder on board that understands the stuff and can back me up in a sense, because it's very easy for people to go back to what they're familiar with because that's comfortable. And we have this public perception that the building code gives them a healthy home, and it fails us. So it's the perception of cost and it's the perception of the building code giving you a quality, healthy home that are the two. And so it's mindset. It's really, and that mindset then can either shut down or open up opportunities for a quality result or just status quo.
And as a society, I suppose, as you know, a community in New Zealand, are you sort of starting? Would you say you're starting to sort of see that mindset change, if you will? Like, are we kind of evolving to sort of think about, you know, sustainability in the places that we live, and you know, like, have you seen change, I suppose, over your career and in that mindset and that an adoption of that mindset?
Definitely. So I move in the bubble of the likes of like QPOD, where we're innovation, wanting to change the way we do things, trying to find smarter ways of delivering quality, being curious about what else we need to learn and develop. So I see, I mean, that's the world I live in, but I see a shift in that world gathering momentum. I also hear more and more conversations from lay people about the disappointments of working with a housing company and how they would do it differently and better. So they're starting to get curious, the general public. A large part of my marketing is all about just in layman's terms explaining to people what is healthy and comfortable and low energy and what isn't, to give them some context and some resonance. So I do see it moving, gathering momentum. The New Zealand Green Building Council has done so much hard work in bridging the gap between the sort of high level energy use of a passive house, or the low level of energy use in a passive house for the high level performance, and just bridging it back down to the building code and giving those 5 tiers of Homestar, and kind of sitting in that middle ground between pulling industry and therefore pulling the New Zealand public, because the industry serves the New Zealand public, to a higher level. So just to clarify, passive house and Homestar are not the same. They're different systems, but and different tools. But so there are industry bodies pushing, and then of course ANZ has got their healthy home loan, where if you get a Homestar 6, you can get 0.7% off your fixed home loan and 1% off your floating interest loan rate. So I think the sustainability being pushed through by banks too, because they've got their own accountability in terms of not only operating carbon, but embodied carbon, which, are technical terms, I suppose, for the layperson. But I think you're seeing a whole heap of moving pieces of the puzzle starting to get momentum in this space. So I think it's just a matter of time. This government did push back on the Building for Climate Change program, which was going to see us keep up, if not match, international standards, and where in other countries are going. I mean, Scotland's already introduced passive house equivalent standards into their building code. Ireland's following suit. So yeah, we're a little bit behind as a country, but we will have to catch up, because obviously the products and the systems and the lending and the insurances, etc., that come internationally are shifting. So that's where we're at.
Okay, sounds like a real sort of multi-prong approach, really, doesn't it? Like, I think it's going to require government sort of incentive and initiative to come through, and it's going to require some part from the banks and and us as sort of a New Zealand consumer, if you will, to sort of drive that 100%. Change, right?
I feel that the change will actually be driven by the public and private sector, not necessarily the government sector, because they're legislative and legislation doesn't lead innovation. So I really feel the financial, and then also the acknowledgement that you've done better in terms of rating systems, and international pressure. So it's everybody needs to do their bit. We're all connected. I think COVID showed us this, and we're all paddling in the same direction at the end of the day. So yes. So it's what you guys do. It's how you educate builders, and bringing them on board as well. It's educating designers. It's bringing them on board. It's everybody within the system and the ecosystem.
Perfect. And then just sort of taking a little bit of a sidestep, just thinking, around sort of what your process is. Like, I noticed you sort of, when we've chatted before, you sort of speak sort of about, like, you've got a real customer centric approach. And I think we could all take a leaf out of your book in terms of that approach. I think customer centric has to win every day of the week in any type of business that you're in, or any organization. And you sort of emphasize taking the overwhelm and stress away from your clients. Sort of, how does that process work, and how do you make your process so smooth? Because from an outsider looking in, like the process just seems so smooth and flawless, and that's really keen to sort of unpack how that looks. I'm Joe Blogs walking in off the street. Like, well, talk me through the process.
Walk you through the process. Well, first of all,
Yeah.
maybe I can introduce you to Small Smart Spaces, which is the. So for those who don't know, Small Smart Spaces is a set of pre-designed concepts that I have come up with using, they can be Passive House certified, they can be Homestar certified, and they use systems, and for the foundations, we use QPOD, that I know are efficient. I know that they will perform well. Putting that all together, I think part of the overwhelm for clients is the responsibility of decisions. So giving them an option where they can just go, I like that, I'd like that, click yes, and start them through a process of smaller steps and then into larger steps, so that they don't feel overwhelmed by the size of the step that they're taking. So you would, book a phone call with me. You can book an evaluation to see if the design you're interested in actually fits on the site. So again, that takes all the stress of, do I need to go? What's the planning? I think we get overwhelmed when we're stepping into a situation where we know a little, but we know we don't know the full picture. So that's there to kind of lend my expertise and talk them through so that they can make an informed decision for the next step, and then they can purchase a concept, and then there's steps after that. So it's for Small Smart Spaces, it really is just meeting people with where they need to be met, so that they can make the smartest decision and the right decision for them in that moment, or they can exit the process if they suddenly decide it's not for them. Because I think that's another fear that clients and customers have of, what happens if I get stuck in this this really big process. And I think this is where part of the barrier is with architects and architectural designers. We're seen as bespoke, we're seen as expensive, and we're seen as delivering something that might not necessarily be what the customer or the client actually wants. So Small Smart Spaces is sort of more focused towards a more systemized approach. Obviously, they still have a more bespoke approach in Smart Living Spaces for those people who do want something different. But there's no reason why the systems that Small Smart Spaces use can't be transferred to what they're trying to achieve as well. So it's trying to take out. It's trying to get that balance between systems and efficiency, but still have it client friendly and site specific and project specific, because otherwise we're going to end up with solutions that don't actually fit the people or the planet or the site. So have I got it right? I don't know. We'll see. But like anything, it'll be an evolving process. So I hope that answers your question. That was a bit of a ramble.
Absolutely. No, it just sounds like a real sort of like a real cool, like, I don't want to say balancing act because it's not the right term, but I think it's like a real interesting like triangulation of stuff. Like it is stuff. It just sounds like phenomenally interesting, and it's just such a cool space to be in. Just so exciting. And just sort of thinking just about those clients that sort of that do work with you. I guess what's the most like always kind of interesting to think about, like what's the most common requests you get from clients, and I guess like just coming back to that idea of kind of budget versus sustainability, like how do you help people balance that, like budget, sustainability, aesthetics? Like how do you help sort of customers balance all of that? Is there a magic pill, or is it
no, there's no magic pill, because you're dealing with human beings. we like to pretend that we're rational, but we're actually probably the most irrational creature and the most emotionally driven creature on the planet. So for small smart spaces, a lot of that has been locked down, so people would understand that those systems have been chosen, and they obviously have restraints around that, and obviously that informs budget. And there's that site, there's various steps in the consultation to kind of fine tune that. I think, like, you would understand cost is like how much, and you're like, well, the more information you can give me, the more I can tell you how much it's likely to cost. But the more information that you get, the more involved in the process you have to be. So it's chicken and egg, really, in terms of cost. So my process at smart living spaces, so I'm going to confuse everybody by the two, but I've tried to divide them into what's pre-designed and then what is bespoke. And small smart spaces takes elements of this and then just puts it in different places, is a design consultation where we do exactly that. We have a conversation about aspirations, planning requirements, cost, consultants, timeframes, all of those parts that need to work together, because obviously the more consultants you have on a project, the more expensive it is. So one of the things for small smart spaces was, how do we use code mark systems and how do we key into what people are already doing so we can reduce the additional costs of engineers. Timeframes with small smart spaces being pre-designed, obviously to get out a building consent set is a month-long process, not a 6-month process, because a lot of the work has been done up front. But the compromise, or the trade-off, the balance is that this is the design that you can choose. These are the designs that you can choose from. And in terms of aspirations, I mean, obviously people are going to look at a design and say, well, yeah, that fits it, or not, and that's a process they have to go through. But if it's a bespoke one, obviously that is a hard conversation to balance what people's expectations are of what they're getting, or what they want to achieve. And then it always boils down to money, budget. How much have you got to spend? And is this your build budget or your project budget? Because, all of those consultants, they have to come in. Consent fees have to come in. There's a whole heap of other costs that need to happen in order for your project to happen. So, and design fees, obviously. So small smart spaces is try to efficiently give some certainty around those points for people without them having to step too far in the process. So there's no silver bullet, but it's an honest, authentic conversation with some good quality research done beforehand, and it's a really good starting point to then allow people to step into the next part of their journey.
It sounds like such a sort of a really refreshing sort of approach.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Sounds really, really cool. And then I guess just sort of thinking more broadly, just in sort of the New Zealand context. So I guess we're starting to see, and sort of mentioned before, we're starting to see more interest in Homestar and passive house standards. How do you think the demand, I guess, for sustainable housing in New Zealand is evolving? And do you think it's evolving fast enough? And then another part of that question would be, like, do you think it's kind of evolving, like, I guess, in terms of global standards, like, are we evolving fast enough, or are we leading the trend, or sort of where do you kind of see New Zealand in terms of sustainable housing?
We're definitely not leading the trend. We are very, very far behind. We were far behind. Let's take H1, for example, because that's the hot topic at the moment. We were far behind the levels, and this is just insulation. This is not the bigger picture about sort of sustainability or low energy use or low carbon materials. We were woefully behind England, which is roughly on the same latitude as New Zealand. So we were lagging behind with those standards in any case before all of this happened. And we had this building for climate change, which I went, yes, that means we can effectively be designing homes to the equivalent energy use of passive houses. Passive houses about the energy use in a home. Homestar also takes into account social sustainability and also takes into account embodied carbon and the materials. So they're not the same thing, but I think all of those systems were waiting, or Passive House is international. They were waiting for New Zealand to suddenly, catch up. It's a turbulent time with Donald Trump pulling out of the Paris Accords and all of that, because that's been a big driver. But at the end of the day, while it might not be 2030, the change is coming. And I guess I've taken the attitude of be the change or chase the change. Are you going to be scrambling to suddenly, get yourself up to where we're going to quickly? I really do feel, like that technology curve that they saw from Silicon Valley, like we're on that in the building industry. And for homeowners, I keep saying to them, how valuable is your house? How valuable is it going to be? Say if you benchmark it at 2030, how valuable is the asset, the largest asset that you own in your life and that you spend years paying off with a mortgage? How valuable is that going to be when someone can buy a house whose power bill is only $20 a month, and who lives in 18 to 22 degrees Celsius year round with that $20 power bill, and has a child that doesn't need to be taken to hospital because they've got asthma, that they can breathe easily. And so, because we do have one of the highest child asthma rates in the developed world. Just you've got to think 5 years, 10 years ahead. I think we will potentially be scrambling, is my fear. And we've already got a low socioeconomic community that do live in really poor housing conditions. So it's how do we all move forward positively, really? But it will be, my fear is that it'll be quick. The change will be quick. So hence why I'm ready, Sam.
Well, it sounds like you've got everything sort of pointing in the right direction.
Hopefully. You never quite know. Tomorrow's another day, but I hope so.
Absolutely. Oh, it sounds tremendous what you're doing, and we really sort of appreciate, we really appreciate the chat, and we really appreciate you sort of talking to us about what you do. And I'm sure that our audience is going to be super interested in this. And I guess, where do people go to sort of learn more about you and your approach and what you're doing, and find and connect with you? Where's the best place to find you?
Find me on my website, www.smartlivingspaces.nz, and there's a whole heap of links that people can go to and see and check it all out. So that's the easiest place to find me. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, we'll pop all of those notes in a section, depending on where you're watching this, whether it's on YouTube or social. It'll be there. You'll be able to connect with Sharon, and we would strongly encourage our audience to do so, for sure, because there's such a wealth of knowledge around building in a sustainable fashion. And like a big part of what we're about at QPOD is obviously is doing exactly that. And really proud to partner with good folk like yourself, Sharon. So really appreciate your time today, and really look forward to the future and working with you.
Oh, me too, Sam. Absolutely. And just a plug for QPOD. The reason why I brought QPOD on for Small Smart Spaces is I'd heard of the Quick Edge, and I'd seen it. I'd had builders rave about it, and there was two things that really impressed me. Was one that you guys fit in with that system really, really well. Just as permanent formwork, it's a no-brainer. It's one thing doing two jobs, which I'm a big fan of. I think that's smart. And also just the innovation that you guys have put into it. So I met Peter up in Auckland at the High Performer Hub, and I was just like, this is a no-brainer. You guys are actually embodying the off-site philosophy and lean manufacture, really. And most of the collaborators with Small Smart Spaces do the same, because that's where we get the efficiencies in terms of labor, in terms of material use, ability to recycle. It's you were just a natural right fit for Small Smart Spaces. So it's been fantastic to have you guys come along.
Oh, perfect. Oh, thank you very much. And we're really excited about the future with you is ever. So yeah, really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Sharon. Much appreciated.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam.
Great. Thank you.